Barbara, I wanted to ask you, where would you think, if you had to guess here, just knowing what you know about this case, and again, your guess is as good as anyone else's, where do you think the crime scene was? Where do you think she was murdered?
In the house. Just a guess. But, maybe he decided to make a visit in the night. And maybe she's...
I think the same thing. I think the exact same thing, because supposedly, or her birthday party was at her grandmother's house. And guess who was there? This dirtbag was there. So I can't see it. It couldn't have happened there. So he probably took her home, and maybe, well, like a lot of people have said on here, I'm 13. This isn't happening anymore. Maybe she took a stand against it. And I'm telling, in fact, and maybe that's what forced his hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, I'm just conjecturing. I'm guessing like everybody. A lot of police work, a lot of investigation. I used to say, detectives sit around and they do what's called, I used to call it hypothesizing and theorizing. Phil Grimaldi would call it spitballing. And one of my detectives, I'll have to use this joke. I use it all the time. I'd say, stop hypothesizing and theorizing and start typerizing your reports. They hated when I said that, but I had to. So, but that's how you come up. You guess, you theorize, you hypothesize. Well, what if this? What if? Well, I don't think this because we saw him here, and that's how you solve cases. You put all these great minds together, these investigative minds, and we used to have briefings because police work is a 24/7 operation. So if you have a murder and the day tour is going home, well, they're not going home; they're going to work overtime. The new shift's coming in. You got to debrief the new shift on everything you found out on the day tour. Yeah. And the same thing when the 4 to 12, the day tour may go home because they just worked 8 hours overtime. So when the midnight comes in of fresh detectives, you have to debrief the whole new shift on everything you found out. And that is how police work is done. And that's how investigation is done. And I know you, Barbara, and the chief medical examiner or the pathologist doing the autopsy, he wants to speak to the detectives. In fact, the detective in the NYPD is required to be there.
Yeah.
And the NYPD, the catching detective, must attend the autopsy.
Yep.
Really, it's sort of a no-brainer. Like, why wouldn't? How is he going to testify if this ever goes to trial if he wasn't physically in the autopsy? So if you're queasy and can't do that, you can't be a detective. That's part of your job, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
In the autopsy. So when the doctor is explaining gun track or bullet track or wound track or how many wounds, this is the wound that appeared to be the fatal wound. All of those things he has to not just explain, show the detective, right? Yeah. Show him this is where it is. Check this. I mean, I've been on scenes with you and you've showed me wounds. Well, look, I remember you weren't there, but there was this one case that I thought was a suicide, and because the guy had a gunshot wound under his and it went out the back of his head and into the wall. And I'm like, this is suicide. And then the medical legal investigators got there. Oh, no suicide. There's a second gunshot wound in his ear. It tells you right there. 2 gunshot equals murder equals homicide, right?
Yep. Yep.
You can't pull the trigger twice. And what would have been, both of them would have been death shots, And so it's just, it's.
You come up with a hypothesis and then you either prove or disprove it. And you need every bit of evidence and every theory to be compared and discussed and endlessly turned over until you come up with the correct theory. And then there it is. You use your evidence to prove or disprove it. You said something before. Sorry, I can't think of it now.